theory has to have a priority.
Capitalism and artificial intelligence are the same thing.
The dimension of the future has disappeared.
There is actually no representation anymore.
There is no final resolution to contradiction.
Militant proletarian snake handling over abysses never gets much wilder than this.
All right, everybody, welcome back to The Dangerous Maybe. And today we're going to do something that we think is pretty cool and pretty special. We are going to do a Baudrillardian interpretation, or as Nance put it, a Baudrillardian encounter with Alenka Zupančič's Disavowal. Now, we can't read the whole book, though it is a short one. What we're going to do today is focus on not the introduction, but the... Oh, where'd you go, Nance? You vanished.
My fucking, my camera overheated. I turned the fan on too late.
Oh, no.
I'll be right back. It'll come back in a second.
Technical
Hold on.
difficulties.
Yeah.
Oh, what little lemur caused this debacle?
Camera is too hot. All right. God, hold on. It's a coming. The light kicked on just as soon as you started recording. I was like, fuck, dude.
Of course.
Okay. Should be back for good. Hold on.
You're
Should
back.
be back.
Okay.
All right.
We're not editing that out because we just don't give a shit. But no, so we're going to read a section of the book called Exposition. And what's the line from Lacan or in Freud? Father, can't you see I'm burning? So this is a unique kind of section. It's exposition. It's not the main core of the theory in the book. It's the theory before the theory. And yet Nance and I, we've been discussing this for the last 2 days, and there's just so much good theory packed inside of this very small section. And as we were talking about it yesterday, we just started riffing because you and I picked up on so many Baudrillardian vibes here. And again, Alenka, the last thing on her mind when she was writing this probably was Baudrillard, but we can't help but see this connection. And so, we're going to read through this. Nance, what do you think of this section?
No, I think it's great, man. And we like immediately started riffing on Baudrillard, talking about simulation and hyper reality and integral reality and like how all this stuff is like, if you understand, or maybe not fully understand, but if you're at least somewhat fluent, if you're passively fluent in Lacan, how reading Baudrillard is actually like it hits 10 times harder than it hits without any Lacanian kind of understanding or familiarity. And dude, just this, I mean, honestly, going on later in the book, taking this like Baudrillardian view to the rest of the book too, I think it pays off. Like I do, like I see it throughout this whole text, but this beginning part is where kind of lit that fire, and it was just like, holy shit, dude, do you see what's going on? Like I was like, dude, are you fucking seeing this? And you're like, yeah, dude, are you fucking seeing this? And we're like, yes, I'm seeing this, dude. Like it's just
look, and I mean,
it's awesome.
It really is, because we both have spent a lot of time thinking through the Baudrillardian real and the Lacanian real and how do they relate or whatever. And, Baudrillard, one of the probably the most well-known places he engages with Lacan is in Symbolic Exchange and Death. And there's a paragraph or two where he's talking about the imaginary, symbolic, and the real. And to be honest, as much as I love Baudrillard, that is not him at his best. And, we can get into why later on. But for us, it really helps to read Baudrillard on the real through Lacan and Žižek and Zupančič, right?
Yep.
And McGowan. Because we think that actually there's a lot of insight. Like you can kind of, in a way, if you go with this interpretation, this Lacanian interpretation of Baudrillard, I think it makes a lot of what he's saying about hyperreality clearer.
Yeah.
And so, look, I mean, like, spoiler alert, what Nance and I are going to show as we read through this short section is disavowal is simulation, or simulation is disavowal. Now, we have to be, there's caveats and there's qualifications to that. But the point is, in the most straightforward sense, there's a very interesting way to connect Baudrillardian simulation to Lacanian, Zupančian disavowal. And I don't know anybody who sees that connection besides us. And so I think it'll be fun to finally explore it. Because you and I have talked about this kind of stuff for a long time privately. But, I said in the last video on the Peter Wolfendale piece that, this year we're going to talk about and engage with Peter Wolfendale, Ray Brassier, Reza Negarestani, more. But we're also going to finally get to more Baudrillard as well. And this is just part of that process. So, let's get underway. Yeah.
All our Lacanian homies out there, what's up? Get in, dummy. We're seizing the means of production or whatever. And look, I would not call myself a Baudrillardian because I would not call myself an any type of Ian. But if I were to have to choose between Lacan and Baudrillard, I would be a Baudrillardian before I am a Lacanian. Even though I think like Baudrillard with this Lacanian update, like the Lacanian patch, makes Baudrillard hit harder and clearer, and the arguments actually come to more fruition. But I don't know. I feel like, we're engaging with Baudrillard. We're also engaging with Alenka, like really trying to engage with Disavowal in a way that I feel like we're not going to take it too far afield from what's being said, what's in the text itself.
And we totally want to do justice to her own, what she's getting at, without Baudrillard being in the mix. But this is two birds, one stone scenario.
Dude, it really is. And I don't know when the appropriate time to bring it up might be, but like even just going to the small conversation we've had with Alenka in the past, talking about the being horny for the apocalypse, guilty as charged.
That's what she said.
Talking about talking about like acceleration as a form of disavowal and all that stuff. It absolutely is. Like it 1000% is a type of disavowal, but it also is this simulation. I think, going beyond hyperreality itself into this new state of world that we live in now. We are living in a post-apocalypse of sorts, but we enjoy, like I was just playing post-apocalyptic video games the other day, and like literally I started out the stream talking about how I'm playing this post-apocalyptic video game right now to assuage my fears and like to disavow the negative emotions that come from believing, the world has already ended or the world is going to end or whatever. So while being horny for the apocalypse, it's a way to disavow the apocalypse itself. So you can continue to consume, get back to work, get back to consuming, get back to being a productive little prosumer.
Yep.
So I think this is excellent in bringing these two together. Is fucking.
And I just want to say, like, look, Alenka is just a master theorist, and
oh yeah,
deeply inspired me. And she is somebody who's incredibly polished in everything that she writes and everything she puts out. And different theorists have different styles, right? Some are very like me. The first draft is, the rough draft is the last draft. Here I wrote it. That's it. That's all that. I don't have more to the process than that. But then you have theorists who are very meticulous. And that's one of the things I really respect about Alenka is how polished her works are. This short section's about as good as it gets to me. Like, that's why I wanted to do this is, look, this book, even though it's short, we don't have time to read through the whole thing. At some point, maybe we'll come back and have a general discussion about it. But this short section is so fucking good.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, let's read that. And so, it is it's one of these things like, Alenka has had huge influence on both of us, and she's never actually been on either of our channels, so hopefully, in the future, that's one of the interviews we would absolutely love to see happen down the road. So fingers crossed, guys. But yeah, without any further ado, Nance, let's get into this.
Exposition. Father, can't you see I'm burning? One of the tropes or master signifiers that keeps emerging in the recent onslaught of various crises, which now already constitute something of a serial crisis, is nightmare. This word, which was present particularly during the COVID pandemics, seems to lend itself well not only to other crises, economic crises, the Ukraine war, the energy crisis, the Middle East crisis, the climate crisis, and its related extreme weather events, but even more to their seriality, by the way they are hitting us one after another, faster than we can keep up. Gerard Walkman made this point very nicely in his book on series. The series form or format is not just an aesthetic or artistic phenomenon. Rather, it is the language of the world such as it is, a world in crisis. Series is a form of crisis.
So, I just think I like this idea of a nightmare that's more nightmarish than one standalone nightmare because it's a series of them. And what's nightmarish about it is that that it's just going to be another nightmare. Like that's kind of why it's a different way of talking about it than Fisher did, but that's why the future's been canceled for us. And there's this existential default setting of futurelessness because look, especially our generation, when we grew up, I'm sorry, if you were born late 70s, early 80s, well, all the time you were a kid up into the 90s, like nothing seemed to really, like from an everyday American phenomenological perspective, things just seemed like they were going to keep getting better.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can say, oh, well, that's white, suburbia, blah, blah. Fair enough. But nonetheless, that was the default for a whole lot of young Americans. And we didn't really have any huge national crises or catastrophes that registered. I mean, if anything, it's like, oh, the Soviet Union fell. Now, of course, none of us had any kind of nuance for what that meant or what was going on there. It just meant, oh, things are getting better here now, right?
Right.
Then something happens with especially 9/11. So 9/11, and I know you've got one before it.
Yeah.
So say
I think it was Columbine. Columbine is really when this shift happened and this new serial horror world crystallized. And Columbine was not the first mass shooting. It was not the first school shooting, but it seems to be the first that was covered in the way that it was covered on cable news. And it had this real horrendous effect. And I think in a way, it prepared the world for 9/11. And 9/11 prepared the world for the next horrific thing, which prepared the world for the next horrific thing. So it really did start this cyclical motion of not just like the one horrible, like when I was a kid, you know, you would have the one horrible thing. You would have the urban legend about, you know, the guy who he's on the corner, like, or, oh, the house that you pass by on the school bus. Yeah, that's where the whole family was murdered and the guy ate their bodies. But like there were these horrendous events that went back in history and they would stand for decades. And
there also seemed as to be anomalies.
That's absolutely it. And that's why like everybody knew about Crazy Tony, the guy that ate his whole family or whatever back in 1953 or whatever, because it was so anomalous. But then in the post-Columbine, post-9/11 world, it's no longer anomalous. Like it is the default state of the world. It's like we're living in a horror movie.
Then the Great Recession, and then and it's just one thing after another. And some of them might not seem like the chat bots that hit us a couple years ago. It might not seem like a trauma on the level of 9/11 or whatever, but it's these events that just constantly are reconfiguring how we view things and all of this. And it is a series of ruptures. And none of us have the time to come to terms with any of it. And so you see these memes about by, age 40, millennials have blah, 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 and gone through all these, different shit, starting with 9/11, but you're right about Columbine. But, and it's just the seriality of it all is part of what makes it so nightmarish.
Well, and so constantly, like they crumble the existing order of the day, and you have to reorient yourself. And before you have time to fully reorient yourself to become rooted in this new future, something else happens, and something else happens, and something else happens. So it's like teleonomics or techonomics. How we don't have time to come to terms with it. The same thing can be said for these social catastrophes, because I think the chatbots caused this great moment of destruction of the existing order of the day. People were forced to reorient themselves to this new reality. But we can't even keep up with that because now people are marrying them, and now people are being driven insane by them. They're not just coming for our jobs, but they're coming for your children. And they're coming for your husband too. Look out, ladies. Like all this crazy, horrible stuff. Like it is accelerating. And I think it's an element of acceleration itself to have these moments of like profound shifts, and they're stacking up and compounding.
Okay, so she's about to pivot into this discussion of Lacan's interpretation of this dream that Freud talked about. And really, it's Lacan's interpretation of it that really makes this classic dream example. Freud kind of says a little bit about it and then is moving on or whatever. But and Alenka talks about this, but it's the Lacanian reading of it in, I believe it's Seminar 11, that really is the go-to referent here.
Yeah. If nightmare seems affectively to capture this series as crisis, it is also a good place to start our discussion. There is a dream, a nightmare, that Freud discusses very briefly in the interpretation of dreams, and which gained more deserved attention and fame because of Lacan's reading of it in his Seminar 11, The Four Fundamental Concepts of Psychoanalysis. It seems that its structural logic could hardly be more timely. Here is Freud's rendering of the dream and of its circumstances. A father had been watching beside his child's sickbed for days and nights on end. After the child had died, he went into the next room to lie down, but left the door open so that he could see from his bedroom into the room in which his child's body was laid out, with tall candles standing round it. An old man had been engaged to keep watch over it and sat beside the body, murmuring prayers. After a few hours' sleep, the father had a dream that his child was standing beside his bed, caught him by the arm, and whispered to him reproachfully, "Father, don't you see? I'm burning." He woke up, noticed a bright glare of light from the next room, hurried into it, and found the old watchman had dropped off to sleep, and that the wrappings and one of the arms of his beloved child's dead body had been burned by a lighted candle that had fallen on them. The key question is, of course, where to situate the real that woke the father up. Strangely, Freud discusses this dream only very briefly and just as an example of how a dream can satisfy the need to prolong sleep. The fire, in reality, should wake the father up, but the exhaustion made him incorporate fire into the content of his dreams so that he was able to continue to sleep. But then another extraordinary thing happens, which Freud doesn't discuss in his account. Something appears, takes place within this fire dream itself, something the violence and pain of which nevertheless wakes the father up, namely his son's words, "Father, don't you see I'm burning?" As Lacan puts it in his commentary on this dream, this sentence is itself a firebrand. Of itself it brings fire where it falls, and one cannot see what is burning, for the flames blind us to the fact that the fire bears on the Unterlegt, on the Unterragen, on the real.
Okay, so right here, we need to address this distinction between reality and the real. Because I don't think Baudrillard, when he was talking about Lacan on the real, really got this distinction, right? Because for Lacan, what he calls reality is really just the imaginary and the symbolic. It is our world of perceptions and intelligible perceptions. It's the world in which we operate in our day-to-day lives that makes sense to us, that we know our way around, that we have basic familiarity with, and isn't in any, impactful way traumatic, right? It's just the world, almost like Heidegger talked about in Being in Time with, there's referential totalities, which is to say, equipmental wholes. There's networks of tools that we use every day, our phones, our devices, our car, blah, 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 right? And then there's the world that we perceive through our senses, and we understand conceptually, we understand what TVs are, we understand what dogs are, we understand what our friends and all. So there's this aspect of reality, which is just perceivable and understandable, non-threatening, right? And that's where we're operating most of the time. Okay. The real is the dimension of reality that we can't face, that we cannot incorporate into our reality. It's the reality that's just too fucking real to cope with. And so it's there, it's operating, but out of sight. And this has to do with the unconscious and those things that have to be forced into the unconscious for us to be able to function properly. And of course, there's always the return of the repressed. So the real is always influencing things. It's always shaping things. Ryan Ingley likes to talk about Lacan as a structuralist of the real, that the real is always there structuring our reality, even though we can't perceive it or conceptualize it. But nonetheless, it's shaping things for us. And so that distinction itself has to be in mind here, because this dimension of, okay, so what's the reality when it comes to this dream, and what's the real when it comes to this dream, or we should say nightmare. And that distinction alone is going to be able to make sense of things from a Baudrillardian perspective that I don't think Baudrillard does by simply just talking about the real or reality without this other dimension of what the real is. And so the real here, like the reason you wake up from a Lacanian perspective is to go on dreaming. What that means is to keep on being able to exist at the proper distance from the traumatic real. Like in the nightmare, the real, the traumatic, threatening, world-shattering real gets too close and it's too much to take. And so you have to wake up back into your imaginary symbolic coordinates where there's a safe distance from that real. So reality shields us from the real, right? And yet, nevertheless, the whole point of psychoanalysis is to go towards that real, to interrogate that real, to better understand that real, and in some cases, though not exhaustively, to incorporate the real more into our reality. So if you have repressed desires, for example, that you can't bring yourself to face, they come back as symptoms, which can destabilize your life. And if you come to accept some of those repressed desires in the real, and they actually get to have a space in the symbolic, in the imaginary reality, okay, you can undo a symptom. You're always going to be symptomal, but yeah, that's part of what psychoanalysis is about. So, yeah, I just want to really emphasize this distinction in Lacan and Žižek and Zupančič between reality and the real. Before we go on, do you think anything else needs to be clarified about that distinction?
No, and saying like you wake up to continue dreaming, because in the dream you don't have this very rich world of repression and disavowal and even the failings of the symbolic and the imaginary. Like there's all these kind of built-in moments of failure to either incorporate or cope with the real. So like saying the reason you wake up is to get back to the dream. I think that's a pretty good way to say it. And if I don't know if you don't get that out there in TV land, then just sit with that and think about that for a minute. Like the distinction between reality and the real. Reality is the dream, and reality is this not to say that it's safe, but it's a safer world for us as the subject. Whereas the real is the dangerous thing. It's the sun on fire. Right. Clutching you and saying, "Father, can't you see I'm burning?" And it might seem a bit counterintuitive that you wake up to get back to the dream where your son's dead and the candle's burning and this and that. But yeah, I think that's an excellent way to kind of demarcate.
Before we go on, I kind of want to just touch on a couple examples of this to make it a little bit like so. Look, operating at the social level, right? What ideology does is try to cover over the real, right? Which is to say, every society has certain dynamics that structure that society, but also that society does not want to face head on, does not want to acknowledge as being part of it. So classism or racism or sexism, like, these are like some of the core things the left has traditionally emphasized. And, if you're living in a certain society, it doesn't want to face these because to face these traumatic reals, these deadlocks, these antagonisms would force you to have to change society. Now, for Slavoj in Sublime Object of Ideology, classism is really, the class struggle is the core antagonism. And we know capitalist society does everything it can to ideologically obfuscate class struggle. Yeah. And it wants to, do it, and it'll do anything it can to keep people from thinking in terms of this division.
It goes so far as to focus on other struggles that are very real struggles, other types of isms, other types of prejudice and bigotry, but it makes those the marquee event.
Yeah.
And class struggle is over there. Pay no mind to the man behind the curtain. The man behind the curtain is this class dynamic, these class contradictions.
Because the class one is the universal struggle. It's what all of us, black, white, gay, straight, cis, trans, all of us are dealing with, right? And so it's not that the other struggles don't matter. Of course they do. It's does this whole corporate wokeism or something where it wants to use certain struggles just to prevent people from really uniting around the struggle, right? So this is how Žižek takes this distinction between reality and the real and applies it to his theory of ideology. So reality is just basically the way of perceiving things that is ideologically approved by the given system of power. Whereas the real is that hidden dimension that underpins that social order, but don't look there, don't deal with that, because if we do, it's going to be quite traumatic. It's going to break apart the cohesive structure and it's going to shatter it, and something else will have to come up and replace it, right? So this is what it means to kind of think in terms of a politics of the real. It's going beyond the perceived reality of the status quo, thinking about what is repressed in that reality and trying to force a confrontation with that repressed dimension, right? Okay. Now, at a personal level, this whole thing of reality versus the real would work like this. Imagine somebody who their goal is to try to be a famous actress or an actor, right? And they say that's the thing they want the most in their life. It's their ideal ego. It's the ideal image of themselves, and they hold it up. It seems to have some core relation to their fundamental fantasy. Like, if I can just be that, I will be able to satisfy the other, which is I will be desirable to whoever the subject wants to be desirable to. And therefore, I will be happy. I will be whole. I will be complete. It's a whole story about I got to be this to have it. And it is jouissance, enjoyment. But the problem is this is this phantasmatic type of jouissance, the image of wholeness, right? The funny thing is, you find that this person at the same time always finds a way to undermine themselves in their pursuit of this goal, of this fantasy. That every opportunity they get to pursue something, to make a connection, they find a way of fucking it up, and they find ways of rationalizing it and justifying it. But if you know what you're looking for here, you're seeing, okay, their holistic phantasmatic jouissance is this whole thing about becoming a Hollywood actor. But their actual partial concrete enjoyment is in sabotaging that. And they actually, the enjoyment that is actually the lifeblood of their existence is the enjoyment in not becoming a Hollywood actor. That confrontation can be utterly traumatic for somebody. They cannot cope with that because they would tell you the main thing they want, the thing that gives their life meaning, is the pursuit of this phantasmatic image of themselves. And yet what actually glues them together here in this world is the enjoyment of self-sabotaging that very image. And that is the real, that partial enjoyment of the drive for a certain type of person. They can't cope with that. If they do, it'll shatter them.
I think it's the distance between this and that. And when you're describing this kind of ideal ego, this I have to be this, what they're really saying is I have to be that, because they have to maintain the distance from what they are and what they think they have to be. And it's in that distance is where the actual enjoyment is actually coming from. So you can think, you can have this avowed belief of I want to be in this position. I want to move over here. But you're never going to move over there because you are sustained by the distance between where you are right here and now and where your avowed professed, desired destination is going to be. I have a strange example of the real intruding. And it goes back to being in the hospital, witnessing the birth of my first child. Now, I've had a few conversations with people over the years about it, and the closest thing I've ever come, like the best way I've ever been able to describe it is like ego death, like a psychedelic, full out of body, ate way too many mushrooms, like just this moment where you rubber band out of yourself and then back into reality. Like it was so traumatic, but it was also, celebratory and beautiful and joyous. But that was a moment, that was a deadlock where previously I was going to be a father. I was going to, turn a new leaf, stop doing drugs and try to be responsible and do all this stuff. But like, I was in this transitory phase, and my momentum, my directionality, my projection was at this futural event. And it was going to be the birth of my first child. And then there in the delivery room, I could no longer postpone that. I could no longer disavow that moment. I could no longer create this simulated world where I could put off all the things I had to do. I really had to cope with that traumatic moment of this baby, this fragile creature who was entirely dependent upon me to take care of it and do the right thing and all that stuff. And that was very traumatic, but it was also very beautiful, awesome thing. But like, it's moments like that kind of trauma. It doesn't just have to be, Freddy Krueger style trauma, but like the real is traumatic in this way, where in that moment in the hospital, the only way I've ever been able to describe it is a psychedelic out of body experience, because it's the real flooding in. And then, I reposition myself and I reorient to this new symbolic world where I'm not going to be a father. I am a father. But for that brief moment of suspension, it's like a kaleidoscopic acid trip.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, look, but the thing is, you felt the impact of it. Now,
Yeah, dude.
this kind of gets us to where Alenka's going. Disavowal does recognize the real, but it does so in a way that simultaneously deprives it of its impact. You know it's there, and yet you don't act as if it is. And so that's this weird thing with disavowal. So, okay, that's kind of where this is all going. And look, so what the point of the dream here is, and Alenka is going to unpack this further, but the point is, there comes a moment where the father encounters the traumatic real, and it's so overwhelming, he has to wake up back into reality where he has a safe distance from that traumatic real.
Yep.
Now, that is not how Freud reads the dream, because Freud's reading is dreams function to keep us asleep. And
Pleasure
Todd
principle.
McGowan, Todd is always emphasizing this whenever we talk about this type of stuff. He's like, as amazing of an achievement as Freud's interpretation of dreams was and is, there's a big problem with it, which is he doesn't properly theorize the nightmare. And he was like, I wish after he had discovered the death drive later on, he had went back and not rewrote, but at least supplemented the interpretation of dreams with a theory of nightmare rooted in death drive. Right. And so that's the thing, is like, okay, Freud, if you're saying dreams function to keep us sleeping, well, how do you account for nightmares that send us bursting back into the waking reality?
Yeah, man.
And so, Lacan, with all of this, understanding all of this, he's the one saying, no, it's the dream. You have to flee the dream because in the dream you get too close to the traumatic thing, the thing that will make you not be able to sleep.
Yeah.
Right. So you wake up to continue sleeping in a sense. We're playing with words here, but.
Or you leave the dream to return to the simulation.
So yeah, that's, stay tuned, folks.
What wakes the father up is not simply the reality of fire, but what this reality is able to trigger, to represent, to smuggle into the dream as the burning real of his son's death and of the father's inability to do anything about it, to perhaps prevent it. It is this other real that ultimately wakes the father up, the real that possibly includes many other difficult facets of their father-son relationship. And if up to a certain point, the dream may indeed be said to satisfy the need to prolong sleep, the configuration changes at this point, and dramatically so. The dream comes up with something traumatic enough to achieve what the real fire was not able to do, to wake the father up. The situation is thus reversed. It is no longer that the fire is incorporated in the dream so that the father is able to continue to sleep. Rather, what takes place in the dream wakes the father up so that he can go on dreaming. Namely, and as also provocatively suggested by Lacan, it often happens with dreams that we wake up so as to go on dreaming. This is particularly true for nightmares, and generally true for the dreams in which a real appears that is more real, more traumatic and shattering than our everyday reality. So, in response, we wake up to reality and proclaim to be awake in order to be able to continue to dream. That is, to continue to exist more or less untouched, unscathed by the real that has just appeared. Which is why the real nightmare is precisely one from which we cannot wake up. A nightmare is defined not only, or not simply, by its traumatic content, but by the fact that we cannot wake up and escape to reality. The traumatic real is there, and it should make us wake up so as to escape it. But for some reasons, this is prevented from happening. We are stuck with it.
So yeah, doesn't a nightmare kind of cease to be a nightmare once you wake up? It's when you're stuck in a nightmare that it's a nightmare.
It's the worst.
Right. And so look, the reality, to go back to this distinction, the reality versus the real. In the dream, there is the reality brought. Okay, so the reality represented in the dream is the external reality that the boy has actually, that the corpse of the boy has caught on fire. Now, this is something Freud and other psychoanalysts are aware of, that you are on some level aware of your surroundings even when you're asleep, because somebody can incorporate something that just happened, like, oh, somebody literally knocked at your door, and then in your dream you incorporate it, and then there's a knock on the door in your dream, right? So, okay, in the dream, the boy is on fire like he is in the real world, but that reality is not what wakes him up. The real that wakes him up is the boy saying, "Father, can't you see that I am burning?" Okay, why is that so utterly fucking traumatic? Because what the boy is saying to his dad, remember, this is a boy who had some sort of illness who just died from it. What he's saying is, "Dad, why couldn't you help me?" You know, and if you want to speak Lacanese, "Dad, why couldn't you fill my lack?" And the lack in the father, like his inability to help his kid, is so fucking traumatic when he's confronted with these words spoken by the child in the dream. That's what he can't fucking cope with, that he wasn't able to help save his kid. And that's why he wakes up. So that's the real. So she'll go on to say the fire within the fire. I love that thing. Yeah. It's the fire within the fire is the real within reality.
Yeah.
And so again, the image of the boy on fire is not enough. Like he, based on his particular subjectivity, he could have dealt with that. It's what the boy said that was so utterly traumatizing that he had to wake up to get out of there.
Yep. Well, to get
Because
back
once
to
he's
the
awake,
world where
he can come up with all these things and disassociate, or you know, blah blah blah. But it's too concentrated an encounter.
Yep, you can come up with justifications, and you can always find ways to create distance.
More actively distract yourself.
Yep.
We have all kinds of ways we do this.
Yep. Could we not say that many of the current crises have the same structure as the dream discussed above? Not just because we experience them as painful and nightmarish, but for two much more precise and specific reasons. The first, they confront us with something more than just the immediate crisis, the fire we need to put out, with something profoundly disturbing and disturbed in our social, ecological, political way of being. In other words, they point to another fire within the fire, which we would also need to consider and confront. Devastating fires that are taking place more and more often all across the globe, from Canada to Greece, Hawaii, and California, to take just a few recent examples, are both a very direct and very metaphorical rendering of this. Apart from the fire that needs to be extinguished in each case, there is yet another fire, climate change, that keeps on burning.
Now, and you can almost double this. So, okay, behind the specific fire, there's if that's the reality, the fire within the fire is climate change as such. Okay, but we can push this back a step further, even say, well, the reality that we're coping with is climate change as such. The fire within the fire is capitalism.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's like you can focus on a specific chunk of reality in order to not have to face the real behind that or within that.
Yeah. The second, what we tend to do in this double or crossfire is precisely that we readily wake up, so as to be able to go on dreaming, to forget about the fire that bears on the real. Extinguishing the fire at hand, attending to its victims, or not, if they are not the right kind of victims, is us waking up. But while this usually fails to lead much further in the direction of also dealing with the fire within the fire, it also allows us to ignore the other fire. For this is not the right time, but then it never is. There is always another emergency to attend to.
We can't worry about climate change right now. Do you see that Los Angeles is on fire? We have to deal with this.
Yep.
We have to tend to those victims and the people in need.
Yep.
And here's the thing. Yeah, and of course you do. But we have to be mindful of how that can distract us from the bigger trauma. Like,
yeah,
as traumatic as this is, there's a much more profound trauma behind this.
Well, it's like, I mean, putting out a fire, like a literal house fire. Like, if you approach the house, you have to deal with the flames around the exterior. You have to deal with the most present surface effects of the fire in order to get in deep enough to actually extinguish the flames at the root of like where the fire is actually burning. There's a core of the fire that's actually burning, and it's covered by, the surface of external flames. So yes, of course, we have to deal with actual effects of these things that are going on in the world, but they're only going to continue popping up and accelerating and intensifying if we don't somehow find a way to extinguish the root of the flame.
But we still have to let the fire within the fire impact us, even if we're focused on the superficial fire. And that the problem is, the key is, don't let the superficial fire distract you from the fact that there is another fire more profound that has to impact you.
It's like putting Band-Aids on an AIDS infection. Like, I mean, yeah, if you're bleeding out, we have to bandage you up, but we don't stop there. Like, let's also get to the root of the problem.
Right. But what disavowal is this ability to face up to the reality with, and even to have some knowledge of, the actual underlying real, but then to go on as if it's not, it loses its impact. It loses its ability to.
It's more and less real. It becomes both more and less real at the same time.
Right.
Using different emphases of the word real. It becomes more reality and it becomes less of the real.
And this brings us to, okay, if we're going to do a kind of playful synthesis of Baudrillard and Zupančič, it's going to go something like this. Hyper-reality is reality minus the real. That is to say, it's more real than real because it's more reality than reality, because it's reality filled in. Of course, it's simulation that does this. It's not actually filled in, but those gaps, those traumatic holes or antagonisms or deadlocks get covered over in such a way as to convince you that you're living in a world without the real, a reality without the real. And so disavowal is very similar to this effect of hyper-reality that Baudrillard was talking about. Because when in Lacanian terms, if you truly lose the real, you have lost reality. Reality and the real have a dialectical relationship, which is to say they're intertwined while being opposed, right? But if you have a reality that's so fixated on convincing you that the real dimension has been overcome, that there's no traumatic kernels, that there's no threatening antagonisms, that all of that is gone, then you are put into this false sense of reality because it's reality without the real. And I'm sorry, but that is exactly what good old-fashioned suburbia tried to pull off, especially in America, was, hey, this is that's why Baudrillard likened it to utopia.
Yep.
It's not utopia, but it sure has the signs of it, because here you are free. Here there is justice. There is solidarity. It's all simulated, but you have the signs of all of that. And you have so many images of freedom, justice, solidarity, all of these kind of things, that you lose track of the real.
This it is the coffee without cream. It is the diet caffeine-free Coca-Cola. We've had an ongoing conversation about the distinction, the difference between safety and security. Now we were talking about the super egoic AI, surveillance, hyperveillance, data valence, share valence, all this stuff we're talking about with AI and super egoic, techno capital. And surveillance is one of the vectors that propagates through. I think it's a very large vector, talking about the AI surveillance cameras that are forcing us to change our comportment. So we're actually dumbing ourselves down in our daily lives. And that's a huge thing. But that for me anyway, begs a question of safety and security. All this surveillance serves security, and security has come to supplant or replace or maybe even simulate what we previously might have had, and maybe even in lesser extents, but as safety. You want a home because you want to be safe. You want to be protected. You want to be not only safe from the elements, but safe from, the ruffians and the layabouts and the roughnecks and the no good necks. and you want to be sure that your personal property is protected. I need this toothbrush. I want to make sure that when I wake up in the morning, no one has stolen my toothbrush, and all the other things, food and nutrition and education and all that. Like, that's all part of safety. But somehow, some way, sometime within the last few decades, safety has gone out the window, because it is true that at this point, anybody could be randomly fucking kidnapped by the fucking government for any fucking trumped up reason, for any made up bullshit reason. Bye-bye, see you later. It doesn't matter. That's not safe at all. That's actually really fucking scary and really dangerous. But we live in the most secure state in the world, and in the most secure time. Like, there's surveillance everywhere. There's video cameras, and there's telemetry, and there's statistics, and there's data about all this stuff. So yeah, I think security being this simulated version of safety is very interesting to me. Or the security state that we're living in is a disavowal of the real dangers that we face every day. Like, we all know at an intellectual level the shit that's happening in Minneapolis right now. But I think there's a huge thing going on with disavowal where, yeah, we acknowledge it, but we manage to do this, mental jujitsu on ourselves where, oh, well, that's far away from me. I have to get back to my daily life.
We also use it to distract us from the more fundamental underlying.
That's the thing. Like, it's this weird interconnected web of disavowal and of simulation. And this is why, like, simulation is disavowal. It's almost to say like they perform the same thing, but
we want to make a
works
distinction
in the opposite direction.
Like, simulation's on the side of the system. Disavowal is a coping mechanism on our part, on the side of the subject, something like that.
Subject. Yeah. I think, disavowal, maybe to say they're two sides of the same coin, or they operate kind of hand in hand as part of the same operation, almost looking at like value. Like from our perspective, exchange value is this real thing, but from capital's perspective, it comes down to the churn or the expenditure, like the amount of resources that are actually contained within that thing.
Yeah. Before we go on, I want to go back just for a second. So here's a question. In good old fashioned post-war suburban America that my grandma lived in and had her kids in, they really did leave the doors unlocked at night.
Dude.
Now, is that safety? Or is that because I feel like security has to come in as the simulation of safety after they've lost that type of safety?
After you no longer can do that, you have to find some way to justify your world or cope with your world without going mad. And so security steps in as the simulated version of safety.
Could somebody say, well, they weren't safety. Really safe? Yeah, actually, they kind of were.
No, yeah, I think it's fair to say that we've lost safety largely, but we're in a hyper secure world. Like, I can imagine saying to someone like, we've lost safety or the world is no longer safe. I can imagine, and it without much effort at all, someone saying, you're insane. We live in the safest of all times ever possible.
Yeah, but the point is, look at the machinery that has to be in place to even try to provide security. They didn't have to have anything in place back. So,
dude, people had their needs met. People had more avenues to edification and gratification and social congress and experimentation, even, because now we can't even experiment with our identities. Now we're forced to lock into one and become engaged in this war of all against all on the internet of my identity is the virtuous identity and everyone else is wrong for all these other reasons. And let me tell you why.
Yep.
Like, no, it's the world, while it is hyper secure, it's extremely unsafe. And I think that bears out. I mean, just look at all the diseases going up. Look at all the deaths of despair. Look at all the drug abuse and fucking addiction and like the world is crumbling around us. Yet it is also true that if I were to go out and commit a crime right now, they would know exactly who I am and exactly when I did it and where I did it. And they could come swoop me up if they wanted to, because they have all the data. They have facial recognition cameras and cell phone telemetry. And even if you're smart and you leave your cell phone at home, well, what about the cameras at Circle K? And what about the cameras at fucking Target? And what about,
Oh, and trust me,
it's
with our theory
hyper-secure,
of
but-
AI, super egoic AI, when these devices really start to register our central nervous systems, our libidinal economies, which they will.
Oh, dude. Thought crime.
Pre-crime.
Yep. 100%. They do that and have done so for a while now, where they algorithmically predict your preponderance for committing certain acts. And it's a credit score. Like, the credit score is pre-crime. Like,
God, that's a good point. Yeah.
like Philip K. Dick wrote, we'll remember it for you wholesale. What the fuck is Minority Report? He wrote Minority Report, and everybody thought it was about the precognitive mutant seeing the future and stopping crimes. No, bitch, that's the credit score. Like, that's your consumer fitness index. Like, that's what is actually going on. But it just keeps intensifying, keeps getting more intense and more extreme. And so do the forms of disavowal. The forms of disavowal become more intense and more extreme. People retreat more and more from the real world. And simulation also becomes more extreme and more compelling. And yeah, we're just retreating further and further away from the real world and diving deeper into the dream. Wake up. Wake up.
Why can't we use the Rage Against the Machine song right now?
Yeah.
Fucking algorithm.
Wake up, everybody. Wake up, samurai. We got a city to burn.
It's some fucking dumb shit. But yeah, dude, this disavowal and simulation. It's clear that we haven't really worked out exactly the interplay between these two, but I also think it's clear the interplay is undeniable. I think they absolutely belong in the same conversation.
Oh, totally. I mean, I can't unsee this. And I've been familiar with the concept of disavowal for a long time. I got to give credit to Alenka, though. Like, that's why we're reading this. This short section really leads you to be able to make these connections more so. And now retroactively, I'm like, yeah, I can see some stuff in Žižek, but right here, she's so tapped in to what's going on with disavowal.
I can tell you the exact sentence where it clicked for me.
All right, where?
Where she's talking, I don't remember if it's in this section or not, but it's where she's talking about the difference between repression and disavowal.
That, I think, is in here.
And then the post-fact world.
It's going to be
it's at the end of this section. It's near the end of this section. So we'll read it. So I'm not even going to go into it now. But that little 2 or 3 sentence refrain is where it clicked for me. And I immediately hit you up and fucking, like, that's when we went on this Baudrillard kick. And it's like, that's it. And now, looking back at Žižek talking about disavowal, it's like, yeah, okay. And talking to Leon Brenner about repression, even like this also kind of helped clarify my understanding of what Brenner is talking about when he's talking about repression. But it took Alenka to really get it to come together for me.
I mean, I'll say easily, if anybody wants to learn about the concept of disavowal, look no further. So goes without saying, I hope.
Yeah. So let's get back to it.
Where were we?
There is always another emergency to attend to. The zeal with which we jump up and react, reach out, express concern, outrage, solidarity is, of course, laudable, but it also often carries in itself a surplus dimension of serving its own purpose. as well as the purpose of disavowing the fire that bears on the real in the Lacanian sense. Attending to this other fire is obviously not an easy task, and it can happen only in a collective way, which makes it all the more difficult to imagine. From possible and difficult political imagination, we thus, rather, return to the real world, to the real problems of real people, as the usual rhetoric has it, and this remains firmly within the given. Yet, what is thus cut off is precisely the possibility that political imagination and a new, substantially different political organization based on it would, in fact, attend to the real problems of real people.
Capitalist realism.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Here resides.
Yeah, go ahead, take it. Yeah.
Yeah. Here resides the profound ambiguity in waking up and concerning everything that this trope evokes. If we look at the series of contemporary crises, and are we not dealing in all these cases, and in spite of their obvious differences, with a situation where we wake up so as to be able to continue to dream? Saved by the Bell.
When I wake up
Saved
in the
by
morning
alarm
and the
clock.
alarm gives out a warning. Sorry,
I don't think I'm going to make it on time. Saved
See,
by
I
the
want to
alarm
use the
clock.
Saved by the Bell sound right as they're like, don't, like whatever, like right at the end of it. Why won't they let us have these sound clips? Come on.
I bet if it's short enough, we could get away with it. I don't
Maybe
know
a
the
Saved
length.
by the Bell.
but- Yeah. Saved by the Bell, Saved by the Alarm Clock, Saved by Harsh Reality. Each time we tend to proclaim that what hits us is a complete game changer, that we have finally woken up. Yet at the same time, we go on mostly as before, as if nothing has really happened, or else we want to return to some anterior state. There are certainly many declarations and a lot of commotion surrounding this waking up, but in the midst of all this commotion, we just seem to go on dreaming.
Isn't this so true about, academics especially? Like, it's not picking on academics, but it's, they know how bad the situation is, and yet,
Yep.
they in their behavior, it's like they don't, and fair enough, they don't know what to do any more than anybody else knows what to do, but they also know the reality of the situation better than most people, like at a theoretical, explicit level.
Yeah.
And so, Disavowal, I think she would say, is clearly at work with a lot of academics, but I would also say it's out of necessity because they don't know what to do to tarry with the real in this, how to,
I don't think this is bad. I don't even think I would call this dysfunctional at the social level. And I think it might be all we have for now, because there is nothing to do. There's no way that anybody could know what to do. I see it with, I think a lot of activists are also engaged in this type of disavowal, where they're super engaged on one issue. And they'll be very active. And it's almost like this one issue has become their master signifier and replaced everything else. And they can't see.
Or their fetish.
Yeah, or their fetish. They can't, it's like they can't even see capital beyond whatever their particular issue is. It's like their particular issue has occluded their vision and has made capital disappear. Once again, he's returned to behind the curtain. But it's also true that, I think a lot of the time these activists are probably pretty important. Like, things could probably get a lot worse if there were no activists out in the street doing anything right now. And that's true. And I'll even, I'll raise my hand and implicate myself and say, I'm not out on the street. I'm not out engaging in that type of stuff. So I don't think that this is to moralize and say shame on everyone for engaging in disavowal and shame on everyone for living in this simulated world. I think it's trying to diagnose what's going on so that we can be better equipped to try to think of that missing thing. What is to be done? Well, what is the key fucking operant in that question? It, like, when I say what is to be done, I'm not asking, like, give me an answer. I'm saying, what is it? We have to discover it, or we have to invent it, or maybe we have to disclose it. You know, who knows? Are
and
things
then it gets
invented,
even,
discovered?
I mean, if you go down this direction you and I have gone down, what if the fire within the fire is Robo Cthulhu?
Right. Yeah.
What do you do with that? I mean, and so look, I mean, just getting up and going to work and, you know, going through the motions is a form of disavowal, because in a sense, the only proper response to our situation is somebody fucking do something.
No, I mean,
but,
look, man,
but you can't live that either.
I like Baudrillard, and I like the only rational course of action is to, what he says, to become the terrorist, or kind of complete this ultimate suicidal act of defiance. And I think that's true. And I think like being able to obsess over this stuff and think about it is irrational. And again, excising all the moral content. It's not doing any moralizing anything. But if everybody right now stopped disavowing, and if everybody right now put the simulation down and faced the real of reality rather than this hyper real world that we live in, I think everybody would say, I'm Audi 5000 G, boom, because the world is that bad. So we need these fictions. We need these constructed La La Lands, Disneylands, theme parks. We need these things to keep the world running, and to ensure that we can actually make it to the future. And then we also need a cabal of irrational fucks to try to figure out what's that future going to be.
Definitely only running for capital itself. It's not running for us at this point.
Right.
It's almost like capital versus humanity.
Almost.
Capital versus subjectivity.
Damn, dude, someone should write that book.
Damn. Man.
You know what?
All right. So
you're in luck, folks. Here in a few months.
Robo Cthulhu will. It's almost like the Avengers thing. Robo Cthulhu will return. In capital versus subjectivity.
But he's coming back as Dr. Doom this time. He's not coming back as Iron Man.
Oh, really?
What, do you know what's going on with that?
I don't know. And I've seen fans kind of speculate on it, but I don't know if Dr. Doom's going to be actually a Tony Stark. I don't know if I don't know how he could be our Tony Stark. But a Tony Stark and another, I don't know.
I don't know either, man. Isn't it coming out soon?
A year from December.
Oh shit! I thought it was coming out this spring.
No, there's more Marvel things coming up that lead up to it.
Fucking
But
Disney.
I know they're trying to reset things with, with
Doomsday.
The next, So it's like trying to correct course.
Whatever, man. You know what? I'll see it when it comes out, but I won't be happy about it.
Enjoy your dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
The only thing we ever truly enjoy anyway.
Yep. Oh, let's take the example of climate change. Allegedly, in this respect as well, we have woken up. But how does this manifest mostly? There is a lot of verbal, formal acknowledging of the crisis. I don't think denial is the predominant response anymore, and we'll return to that. A whole new speak is emerging out of this awareness. Green transition, green economy, sustainability. There is lots of commotion. There are conferences, declarations.
Hold on. Can I just interject real quickly? So I don't remember if she gets to the distinction in this specific section, but for her, the difference between disavowal and denial is that denial truly just doesn't embrace the reality of the facts at all.
Yep.
Right? Disavowal embraces the facts, embraces the reality, and then acts as if it doesn't act in accordance with that. It goes about its business like it didn't know what it knows. And so that's the difference there.
It's they know all too well, but nevertheless.
Yep.
Whereas the denial is no. I reject
I don't know.
that.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's no doubt that, generally speaking, most people do take climate change more seriously than they did, say, 10 or 15 years ago. But still, faced with the numbers and very reliable scientific calculations, as well as with devastating events around us, extreme weather, fires, floods, and so on, we mostly seem to go on dreaming in the midst and with the help of all this commotion. Growth still remains the master signifier of our economy. The key word seems to be adaptation. We keep hearing that we need to adapt to the new reality. But what exactly does this mean? We do indeed seem to be able to adapt to almost everything. But is this really the best path to take? It is relatively easy to adapt or get used to a new reality. What is much more difficult is to tarry with the real, with the fire within the fire, to take into account the impossible real of what is happening and mobilize, organize on the grounds of its truth. As Lacan also perspicuously put it, we get used to reality, the truth, which also emerges with and from every crisis, we repress.
I mean, that's really great, but it's also very straightforward. I don't know if I have much to add on that because, I mean, what do you have anything to add to it?
Just know it, just to the point of like activists being engaged in this type of disavowal. And it's like, yeah, I'm happy that activists have turned, because 15 years ago, not nobody, but the overwhelming majority of people didn't believe in fucking climate change, global warming. Like people would be like, oh yeah, that shit's not real. And there still is, I think, a large contingent of people that reject it or deny it outright. But I think, the mainstream believes it and is concerned enough that maybe some progress can be made. But again, climate change isn't the ultimate crisis, and that's the thing. So I don't know, it's a tightrope walk. And that's what she's describing is that very tightrope walk.
Well, yeah, and I mean, look, Mark Fisher, I mentioned capitalist realism. Fisher was trying to tarry with the real. He was trying to say, look, reality presents itself as the only thing that's possible is capitalism. And that's there is no alternative, right? But his point was the reason why none of us feel safe in that is because this lingering, almost inconspicuous impact of the real at the heart of this, which is, it's the only option we have, but it's probably going to fucking kill all of us.
Yeah.
One way or another.
Yeah.
Be it, collapse of the global economy, be it Robo Cthulhu, be it new disease, whatever happens. Yep. And Fisher was the one trying to say there has to be some sort of other way of organizing society that would be better equipped to deal with these crises, better equipped to deal with the real.
Yeah.
And so I think he was totally tapped in. He was trying his best to not disavow the situation.
Yeah. And I mean, look what it did to him. I think another important thinker who was really trying to deal with this is Ursula K. Le Guin, and she's a fiction writer, she's a science fiction writer, but her famous quote is very similar to that: there is no alternative. talking about the capitalism seems insurmountable, basically. And then she quilts it with, well, so did the divine right of kings. And basically she's saying, like, don't give up hope. And in fact, find some way to have this radical hope. And then she wrote a lot of fiction, and she explored a lot of ideas about maybe how to organize a society in a way that wouldn't end in the destruction of the human race. And guess what, folks? I don't think she figured it out. I don't like, I love Ursula Le Guin, but also, like, I think if you can say Mark Fisher's project was a failed project, which I think it's fair to say that, I think it's also fair to say Ursula Le Guin's project of imagining a better future has also failed. But I think the core at both of their projects was not trying to imagine a new world, but it was just focusing on that radical hope. Like, don't give up hope. Like, yes, all is lost. Yes, we did lose the war. Nevertheless, keep on hoping. Like, find that radical hope.
The title of one of Žižek's books, The Courage of Hopelessness.
That's it. And yeah, and I think that's what it takes to tarry with the real, is to really sit with the hopelessness, but not let it defeat you, to find courage, to take heart.
Isn't that the stubborn kernel of humanity?
I think so. And that's the irrational core. That's the defiant. That's Captain Dan. Is this all you got? Is that all you got?
Yep.
Oh,
but it's almost like a ear reason in reason. It's
yeah.
There is. It's funny. We could go, that's so irrational, but I always see this spin, and I go, and that's precisely why it's rational.
Well, or that's precisely why it's reasonable. Right? Let's do it. Let's run with Negarestani and Wolfendale, and let's separate the two. Let's separate reason from rationality and say, doing what is irrational is what is reasonable. Coming from their perspective. Now, I don't know if I want to endorse all of it, but it's exciting. What they're doing is exciting.
Right. Yeah, I definitely. Looking forward to getting more into that.
Yeah.
Stay tuned, folks.
Stay tuned.
Okay, yeah, but here we get the great paragraph on disavowal versus repression. So this is where it's got that quote you like so much.
Yep. Repress or else disavow, which is a slightly different thing or a very particular modality of repression. What, in fact, is the difference between repression and disavowal? We could formulate it in simple topological terms. Repression effectually implies two dimensions or two levels, our reality and another level where what is pushed out or repressed from our reality exists. What is repressed no longer constitutes part of our reality. Disavowal, on the other, and this is it, this is where it pays off for me. Disavowal, on the other hand, is one-dimensional in the sense that what is disavowed does not disappear from reality. It is still there on the same level, part of our reality. Everything is out in the open. We know it well and say so. So disavowal doesn't make something disappear. Rather, it changes, affects the nature and meaning of this something. We could say that it derealizes it. It affects its character of the real as real, that is, as an extraordinary, surprising, shattering bit of our reality. When you perceive or learn about something and disavow it, it is because this something has the capacity to change reality for you. It is not just any stupid thing from this reality. The same could be said for repression, of course. But whereas repression preserves the extraordinary character of that thing by pushing it out of our ordinary reality, disavowal keeps it as part of reality, yet changes its character. We could thus say that disavowal consists in making what is for me, and perhaps not only for me, an extraordinary, game-changing fact, an ordinary fact, but still a fact. What is disavowed is its shattering, game-changing dimension, and not simply its fact or its occurring. Perhaps it is this that we like to refer to as a post-factual world. Not that there are no more facts. On the contrary, there are only facts around. Yet they are just facts and no longer carry any weight of the real.
So we live in diet caffeine-free reality. And that's simulation. Or hyper reality, at least. You know, I mean, it gets trickier when we bring in this whole thing with integral reality, the fourth order. But despite a little conceptual difficulty there, it still tracks for me, like these connections. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I think another thing, she doesn't use the terms here, but with repression, there's these two different layers or levels. That's consciousness and the unconscious. What's interesting about disavowal is it doesn't bring the unconscious into play, at least the way she's talking about it, right?
Yeah.
Everything remains at the conscious level. So there is this, this knowledge of some traumatic crisis. And yet at the same level of consciousness, there's also, oh, well, whatever. Like that's what really, if disavowal itself were to speak, its main word, like if the superego says enjoy, disavowal says whatever.
Yes, absolutely. And it's, I think often we have no choice because we're just exhausted, and not in the sense of like, I'm too tired to deal with that right now, but like just fucking have no more psychic resources at all to deal with it. And so it's just the easier path. I mean, it's when you, I don't know, Sean and I a while ago were talking about homeless people in cities. And it's when you step over the homeless guy on the street who's fucking having an overdose or whatever, and you see him and you very much acknowledge, man, that guy's having an overdose. He might be dead later, but you step over him and you keep walking anyway. But you don't have the resources to stop and deal with this man having an overdose on the street. You couldn't do that.
So let me ask you this. This widespread phenomenon of disavowal that she argues is really defining our time and place, our situation. Is it itself a fire that has a fire within it, which is the lack of time and energy, or the lack of exhaustion or burnout, exhaustion, lack of time and energy? It seems to me that we could argue that disavowal, there's a fire within the fire here.
And the fire within the fire of exhaustion or burnout, like the fire in the fire of that, is the commoditization, the total commoditization, or the near total commoditization of the subject. The prosumer model being extrapolated from, like, you don't just go to work. You don't work a 40-hour work week anymore. You take your work home with you. You have, you answer work calls at night and on the weekends, or you do email, or you work 60 hours a week or 70, and you can't keep up a family and all your responsibilities and shit on a single income. So you need a dual income. So either you get a partner or you find a hustle, and even then you can't afford it, and you're never around for your kids. And so you can't give your kids what they need in the way of nurture. And so they seek the internet and they seek these other forms of fucking hyper real simulation. And then we see these compound effects of like the Raja Jackson incident. Like that happened because parents aren't able to raise fucking families.
Now, let me ask you this. What you just said forges another connection. This thing with disavowal, is disavowal not getting at our form of nihilism?
I think so. Yeah.
Doesn't the reality of what happened with Raja Jackson, isn't the problem that it doesn't impact the people watching it on a screen?
Yeah.
They know all too well what the reality of that situation is, but it doesn't impact them. Yep. And because they disavow, in this moment. And to me, that's nihilism. That's our
Yes.
nihilism is the refusal to be impacted by the real.
Yeah, the kind of nihilism with which we take issue, the paranoid postmodern nihilism, or whatever. Yeah, it is very much keyed in on this disavowal, because like all the horrible shit, like the kids are in the know. The kids know it all. The kids are fucking online all the time. They have their TikTok on their phone. They have their earbuds. They have their this, their that. They have everything. They're connected to everything. They know it all, but they don't feel any of it.
And that's it. So, okay, when they've tried to, they've tried to do their best to get control of this situation, but I would say even up to 2 or 3 years ago, gore videos were all over the internet. You could easily access them. You didn't even have to go to gore sites. You could do a Google search, and it would get you Funky Town gore, which I'm not going to go into, guys. But okay, it's a very disturbing gore video to say the least. Here's the thing with these gore videos: everybody watches them, and they know what's happening in these horrendous acts of violence, and yet, nevertheless, they're not impacted by it at all.
Well,
now, why could Faces of Death so impacted our generation when we saw it, even banned from TV? But we've gotten to a point where the impact of a traumatic image, nothing.
Well, I was going to go there. I wasn't going to say Faces of Death. I was going to say rotten.com, but for, those of our age, same, right? It's these things, they were anomalous. These things you had to put in some non-trivial effort to discover them, and they were shocking. I mean, I still have images burned in my mind from rotten.com and from Faces of Death that I'm picturing them right now.
Same.
There's a couple in particular images that stick with me 30 years later, or however long ago that was. And they were anomalous. And now this stuff is just so easy to access. Like it's just out there. But the reason it's out there is because the near total commoditization of us, our attention, the attention economy, and the always on and the data and this and that. That's why these things are out there. That's why the internet works the way that it does. It's not moral failings on the part of people. I fucking can't stand it when people want to grandstand about moralism and say these things are bad for our children and we need to this and then we need to that. Fuck off. Be a real person. Understand what it's like to have to work and have to have a job and have to pay your fucking bills and have to try to do all the million things we have to do as people. It's not a moral failing, people. It's not about the moral decay of the West, you fucking cucks. It's about capital and their endeavor to totally commoditize us and extract every last little bit of value that they can from our attention and from the algorithms. That's the real problem.
Yep. And it's not personal responsibility. It's a virtual structure. And I know that's really hard to think.
Yep.
But until you start to think it, that's the fire within the fire.
That is.
Or at least another example of it. But no, look, I feel like Disavowal, another Baudrillardian connection to it, is there is a kind of sharp distinction between everyday reality, which we go through the motions and it doesn't impact us because it's made to not impact us, and the impactful real. There is a distinction there. Now they're tied up, but the point is there's also a separation between them. The real is what breaks through in certain moments and shatters our reality. Disavowal is implosion.
Yeah.
Disavowal allows the real to really be there but in a way that it blurs the lines, and therefore it makes it not impactful.
Yeah. And that's why you can watch Funky Town, and it is this traumatic, horrific moment. And if you really think about it, I think you can encounter the real in that moment when you realize what's going on and the horrors of what's going on. Right.
It's not a horror movie, guys.
But you can also just kind of see it and observe it and scroll right on past it.
And you know why? Because the very structure of our society, the way that, and this is integral reality. This is fourth order, because everything is so enmeshed that the real image and the cinematic image, they're so similar, and so that we've been the old word is desensitized, but that's really what Alenka's getting at when she's saying that the real can't impact us. We've been desensitized because the flood of our hyper real images have completely deteriorated our ability to be impacted by the real, because we've been so impacted by the fake, and to the point that it all blurs together. So when you see, I don't care, like Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees, or you start with those type of violent images and you work your way up, and you watch more and then it's almost like gore videos are horror movies,
amateur
shot
horror flicks,
very on shitty camp. Like, it's like, oh, this is a shitty no, it's not. It's not even like, a Serbian film. It's not a movie.
Serbian film, Spit on Your Grave.
Yeah. Solo.
Yeah. Or even something
Cannibal
like
Holocaust.
The Blair Witch. The Blair Witch that intentionally tries to blend and play with the form and play with the medium. I actually think the Blair Witch is probably deserves a lot more respect than I've given it in the past. I think I've only seen it
I think
once.
it's an intellectually cool movie. Do I really like watching it? No, I like thinking about it.
Yeah, I think it probably sucks. That's why I've only seen it the one time. But thinking about it, like, no, I think they were trying to at least think through what was happening with the medium and with it came out in the early 2000s, maybe?
Yeah,
or maybe
into the
late
90s, early 2000s. But they were totally playing with the blurring of the lines between reality and fiction. And
and the thing is, again, it's not down to individual responsibility, and it's not down to individual failing. This is structural. Like we have no choice. If you don't do as one does in the world today, you're rejected, and you become one of the homeless guys on the street overdosing on fentanyl while we step over you so we can get back to the dick sucking factory. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, look, can't we say that the corrosion of the Baudrillardian reality principle, which is the criterion through which the epistemological semiotic criteria through which, and I know he focused on semiotics and not epistemology, but a lot of what he's saying can be translated into epistemological terms. I've done it. I just have never shared that thing. But that set of representational criteria has been corroded and imploded and distorted and blurred. And is that not possibly the fire within the fire of disavowal? Like, the Baudrillardian implosion of the reality criterion itself makes it easier for disavowal to operate in our psyches.
yes. Yeah. So it's this feedback loop, and it's accelerating. So once again, similar to techonomics, this is, I don't know. Is
there a positive feedback loop between?
I absolutely think there is. It's like an Ouroboros, and it's accelerating and it's intensifying, and it's not about moralizing, and it's not about trying to shout on the street, "Hey, wake up, pay attention," because I think that'll only lead people to disavow even harder. I think a lot of people, when they see someone yelling at them, "Hey, pay attention to this. This is important," they react strongly against it because they know all too well how important it is. But they also have to get back to the dick sucking factory, and they also have to deal with their unresolved personal issues, and they also have to deal with the fact that, X family member is dying and they can't afford to pay for it. Like, we've all been immiserated. These things are all connected. It's just getting harder and harder to be a subject. We're running out of room to breathe. It's like we're in the trash compactor and it's been magnetically sealed. And the people on the street corner are shooting at it, but they don't know it's been magnetically sealed. We got to tell them, hey, we got to figure something else out, man. That's not the way. But yeah, it's very much a cybernetic process, and it's very much accelerating and intensifying.
So for Nick, Nick Land.
Yeah.
For those who are here for Zupančič and maybe Baudrillard, Nick Land, what Nance is referencing here is Nick argues that there's this positive feedback loop that exists between capitalist economics and the development of technology, and that the more capital accumulates, the more that's going to be invested in refining and enhancing technology. The more that technology emerges and changes our world, the more that capital can accumulate because it opens up new production possibilities, blah, blah, blah. What we're trying to get at here is a positive feedback loop, which is to say a loop or a circuit that amplifies, that keeps the intensity building, right? We're seeing a loop between Baudrillardian simulation and Zupančian disavowal.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're trying to get at here. I will say this.
Yep.
Look, because we haven't talked much about Baudrillard, I've known this for a long time, so I'm going to just get it out of the way. Somebody who just read Baudrillard for the first time 3 days ago will be in the comments going, "Oh, you guys are talking about reality a lot for guys who read Guy, let me just give you a little. Baudrillard never stops talking about reality up to his last works, like the Lucidity Pact. He talks about integral reality. He talks about virtual reality. He knows that we have no choice but to keep trying to think through what reality is, what different layers it has, how it's been modified. And so if you're here to go, but actually you shouldn't say reality, just be out. Sorry.
Or you don't have to leave.
I'm just breaking balls.
But maybe sit down and don't talk for a while. Or also
just keep
say
reading
everything you wanna
Baudrillard.
say. Whatever. Yeah, just keep reading Baudrillard.
And again, it's just a thing where this is a thing with young people who get into Baudrillard on the first day and they're like, you can't ever use the words real and reality anymore. Yes, you can. In fact, you're going to use them more now.
I'm sure I was even more annoying than that guy in the comments.
I'm just talking to my former self. Come on.
Yeah. But no, dude, I mean, I honestly think Baudrillard's my guy, dude. And I got a lot of guys. I think Marx is my guy. I think Bataille's my guy. Bergson, Lacan. Like there's all these guys who are my guys. But Baudrillard, like he might be the first person outside of Marx that I really sat down. Yeah, I really sat down and tried to reckon with, thinking through what he was saying. But yeah, I was probably just as fucking annoying as you in the comment section. So don't feel bad about it. We're not singling you out.
Again, I'm just talking to younger me, so I'm just joking. But no, and just to be like, Zupančič is one of my guys. So guys also,
for sure.
It's a, gender non-specific term in this case.
Hey man, I think gender, look, I can't wait till we live in a world where I can wake up one day and in the same way that I change my clothes, I can change my body. I genuinely want that. And until we live in that world, it's just a fact of life. And dude, guy, bitch, all these words that are traditionally gendered, they don't have to be.
Wouldn't it be, I mean, you just think about that. Like if you could put a human consciousness, I don't care of what form of sexuation it's undergone, which, okay, some people don't, it doesn't matter, guys. Point is though, just a human consciousness to be able to switch from a male to female body, like how much perspective that would give you. Like if you're walking around in a female body one day and then next week you're walking around in a male body and you're like, oh yeah, the world is very fucking different.
Yeah.
Compared to, based on what body I'm walking around in. Just that alone would be, that would impact.
Oh yeah.
Now maybe people get used to it. People adapt very quickly to things, but yeah, for anybody like us, if we found ourselves in that situation, I mean, yeah, it's like,
dude,
holy fucking shit.
I love skateboarding with my shirt off. I would I wonder if I was in a woman's body, if I would feel the same way. I probably wouldn't.
Probably it would be a different. You would feel some sort of difference in that.
It would be very different. But like, yeah, I don't know, walking around and strutting around like fucking John Travolta.
Yeah, I was about to just say, just staying alive.
Yeah, dude.
You need to strut,
But
Nance.
I want to. I don't know. I also want to be Bo Derek on the beach. Wouldn't that be cool? Or Farrah Fawcett, or one of the popular new girls from to Anna de Armas. I mean, I'm here for it, dude. Sign me up.
Well, and that's, I mean, look, what Land is talking about has a lot of resonance with what Baudrillard's talking about, because this process of technological advancement spurred on by capital accumulation. Yeah, this is why Nick called it meltdown. All of these distinctions that have long been human organizing principles, they're all going away. So both of them were tapped into this in different ways, of course. But no, I mean, you know, it's all going bye-bye.
It's all going bye-bye. And you know what? It's probably a good thing that a lot of it's going bye-bye, but we don't want all of it to go bye-bye because we're part of the it.
Well, yeah, it's this whole thing of subjectivity. You're just going to make us into actual fucking objects.
Yeah, we'll be little
Soylent
baubles.
Green is humans.
Yeah. It's people.
Yeah, that's it.
The hand, the last fucking frame of that movie where his hand is kind of coming up. I love Soylent Green. Let's get back to the text. Yet they are just facts and no longer carry any weight of the real. And it is worth emphasizing that the status quo maintained in this way does not mean simply that everything stays the same, but also that even the most drastic changes, for the worse, don't really get to us. Adapting effectively to the new reality can be part of the status quo, and so can numerous forms of catastrophism and fascination with the apocalypse. With various disasters and predictions of doom, with the spectacle of it. Far from being the opposite of disavowal, this kind of catastrophism is an important part of its contemporary functioning. The end of the world, for example, acts as a kind of spectacular backdrop, a coulisse, a stage on which we can simultaneously go on with our business as usual. More often than not, the images of the apocalypse are but a phantasmatic screen that screens and protects us from the actual apocalypse that is already going on and is not waiting for us somewhere in the future.
Okay, so we're going to be on this one for a minute because there's two main things we want to get at here, because these are some of this is some of the stuff we were discussing earlier today and yesterday. So, Nance, is Alenka, is she calling out Nick? Is that what this is? Or CCRU?
I mean,
look, okay, let me explain what I mean by that first. Hold on. All right, guys. So if you don't know, Nick Land, CCRU, they engaged in hyperstition. They attempted to, quote, traffic with the future by engaging in theory fictions, right? So they were trying to try to speculate in a very specific way, speculatively engage with the apocalypse, where AI capital was going, which is the realization of artificial superintelligence, which I opted to call Robo Cthulhu, which that's what we both now Robo Cthulhu. Partly because Land and CCRU were influenced by Lovecraft. And so Robo Cthulhu, Mecha Cthulhu, Techno Cthulhu, it is this idea of an artificial superintelligence that would ultimately bring about the end of humanity, thus the apocalypse. And during the CCRU days, they did a lot of speculating on this through theory fiction. So the question is, does fixating on sci-fi images of the apocalypse, or even biblical images of the apocalypse, Book of Revelation, does it function as a disavowal of the actual concrete crises we're up against here and now, and in a sense neutralize that?
Yeah, I think I think absolutely. I think the true terror is that we will go quietly, that we will not go out with a bang, but that we will just continue to rot.
Not even a whimper.
Not even a whimper. Just it's the long, steady decline. I honestly think that is more traumatic than images of kaiju robots, biomech, fucking power armor machines.
What's the real
impaling us
trauma?
on laser swords.
What's the real trauma, Nance? Is it an encounter with Robo Cthulhu, or is it soul crushing wage labor day in and day out for your whole life?
Yeah. Like at least in this phantasmatic vision, at least you get to be Mel Gibson and you get to have a cool ass dog and a cool ass car. Or whatever. Pick your poison. Say you like Jesus. At least in the Jesus story, you get to meet Gabriel and he has a cool sword.
And you get to ride through the universe on a white
and,
horse and come down here and kick some ass.
Yeah, you get to do all this cool shit. But no, like all of these fantasies really do allow, like it's cool. I don't have to deal with the trauma of this is it. Really, it's like in Hitchhiker's Guide, like mostly harmless. That was the entry about Earth in the Encyclopedia Galactica. Mostly harmless. And it used to be harmless, and then they had to update it to mostly harmless. But like, is that it? That's all? All my hopes and all my dreams and all the beautiful, wonderful things I've encountered and all the horrible things I've dealt with, and my achievements and everything I've overcome, and the depth of my love for things and the depth of my hatred for other things, and all this just pure primal energy. You mean it's nothing? I just have to work my shitty job and then die at 62 years old and everyone's going to fucking forget about me and it's a cosmic joke. That's the real trauma. I would rather imagine being crushed by a space robot and having my internal organs flung about and, eaten by scavengers and raiders, or have to deal with all these horrible images, but they're just images. Images are safe. Images can't hurt you. They're like ghosts or dreams. They can't hurt you. What really hurts is really reckoning with, this is it? This is all? You mean I spent the best years of my life working at the dick sucking factory? You mean I never got to do all those things I wanted to do when I was a little kid who still believed in the magic of humanity? That's really traumatic. So no, fuck you. I'm going to go get stoned and watch Mad Max because I know the world is ending anyway.
So the real trauma is, Father, can't you see I'm burning?
And you can't do shit about it?
Capital, can't you see I'm burning? Tough luck.
Yeah, man.
Better luck next time. But there won't be a next time.
Thanks for coming. That's all, folks. No, but like that, absolutely. And I think, I spend so much time.
Is that not our difference between, like, because we're so influenced by Nick and, but I think this is where we get to the heart of maybe our most fundamental disagreement is this fire within the fire he doesn't seem to see that we have to live with. And it's not, I want to go, Nick, don't you see the fucking fire? I'm in the fire. I need you to see the fire I'm in.
Yeah.
Like, I appreciate the technological advancements spurred on by M Prime. Like, this is a dimension of capital I appreciate. but you got to see this fire within the fire.
Yeah. Well, and I mean that is, I think, the core disagreement, and I think going all the way back, it's been there the whole time. It's in the Thirst for Annihilation. He doesn't have a view of the subject. He doesn't share our view of the subject. Now, it is interesting that we recently discussed time and Kant and subjectivity just a little bit with Nick. But I think that was probably one of the most interesting conversations we've had with Nick, is when we just dipped into subjectivity just a little bit there.
Look, maybe this would make him want to go, ugh. But he is a philosopher, doesn't see subjectivity. He as a person does.
Absolutely.
It doesn't transfer into his work. And because he knows that the people who are close to him matter to him, they are irreplaceable, they are singularities in all the ways that you and I talk about as subjectivity, right? That doesn't work its way into his theoretical work. And so, no, I mean, it's funny. Like, I think about it now, I'm like, because, okay, the book, Capital versus Subjectivity, a Žižekian critique of Nick Land. Again, for those who don't know, the critique, this choice of word or word, got a big thumbs up from Nick, because the original subtitle was a critical or a Žižekian engagement with Nick Land, which isn't nearly as attention grabbing as critique.
Clickbait, folks.
Right. So Nick totally was like, oh no, go with the critique.
He prefers it. He prefers critique.
Because he knows at the same time that I'm totally engaging with his work from a position of good faith. And so really, though, when I think back now, like, really the whole book can be summed up with this modification. Nick, can't you see I'm burning?
Mm-hmm.
That really is the core of this 800-page book I wrote.
It's true.
So it's funny. I mean, I might have to add a little bit on this.
Yeah.
Because guys, it really is almost done, but I've got a couple things I'm adding here or there. I think I just found one more thing to add. Okay, let's get back to it. That was a bit of a detour, but I'm glad we did it.
Yeah. Disavowal and denial are not the only modalities of circumventing some deeply upsetting real. There is also déjà vu, or false memory, which actually comes very close to disavowal in the way it invokes knowledge. Oh, nothing really new about this. We've seen this many times before. Disavowing in this way the unprecedented character of what is happening. In his discussion of the phenomenon of so-called fausse reconnaissance, false memory, Freud starts by pointing out how it not infrequently happens in the course of an analytic treatment that the patient, after reporting some fact that he has remembered, will go on to say, "But I've told you that already," while the analyst himself feels sure that this is the first time he has heard the story. When this is the logic at stake in the phenomenon of false memory or déjà vu, what then is the logic at stake in the phenomenon of false memory or déjà vu? This is how we might put it to make the point as clear as possible. Something that has just arisen and is of traumatic or disruptive nature is intercepted and derealized by a precipitate knowledge, recognition of it. We look at it as belonging to some other time or temporality. We are looking straight at the traumatic thing. It is right there in front of our eyes, fully acknowledged, yet we see it as coming from far away, as strange and indifferent. The false memory thus paradoxically maintains the unfamiliar, strange, and indifferent character of what appeared by means of the very feeling of recognition and familiarity. It's already known and boring before its meaning can even register. We might also say that it maintains this indifferent character by means of cutting the thing from its possible articulation as presence in reality. For this articulation appears already for the first time as its own memory. Déjà vu also functions as a powerful social form of disavowal. That is, disavowal as built in the very foundations of our objective socioeconomic relations, as well as in the ideology that sustains them.
Okay. That was a big chunk, but that's the déjà vu stuff. So this is something you and I didn't have a chance to talk about. Considering how important time is to you, as it is to me, but I want to know what you think about this déjà vu thing, because it brings in this layer of time into the equation.
I think being able to pretend distance from a thing, either temporal or spatial, that's a way to kind of be safe from it, and projecting something that's going on right in front of you, but then having this false sense of, oh, this has happened before. It is a way to, like, your past is objectively your past, but it's also already fiction. Like your memory is not real. Just like images and ghosts, memories can't hurt you. They can very much, wear down on.
They can also
they
can traumatize you. It's crazy.
Yeah. But no, I think our temporality, our temporal frame of reference, is, I don't know, like at the core of what's going on with the subject. Like we're always either projecting or reflecting. We're always looking back on our narrative, our life path, our wave form, and observing and reflecting and saying, this is me. I am this person. I am this individual. This is my identity. To orient ourselves in the world and situate ourselves in the world. Or we're projecting ourselves in the future, saying, I want to X, Y, and Z. I want to be that. Like there's in maintaining the distance. So yeah, I think introducing temporality to that, I mean, honestly, I think it just, more than anything else, it demonstrates that temporality is not time as such. Like there's already something going on between what we see as time, or what we perceive as time and interpret as time, and what is time proper, because we can do tricks like this.
Okay, so two things. All right, Baudrillard. Okay, he didn't focus on time very much. I would not call him a theorist or philosopher of time, but he has this great insight that time used to, in human society, time used to have a symbolic rhythm to it based on our gift-giving practices. And so the seasons really themselves gave to us. We gave back to the seasons. And there was kind of a, there's a dimension of time that this is this time, this is this time, based on how we symbolically engaged with the seasons. Okay, time just becomes a homogeneous 24/7 type of social temporality with capitalism. So commodity time is 24/7, 665 days a year. Like it's that type of just go, because the form of exchange is not dependent on the season or anything. It's just commodity exchange. And it doesn't matter if it's winter, it doesn't matter if it's summer, it doesn't matter. You're just buying and consuming commodities. Does this change something with déjà vu, do you think?
I think most likely, yeah. Because I mean, and I think we've observed weird things happen with time. I I think back often and fondly to a time when I would put the TV on and I would have to wait to see the show I wanted to watch. And I would have to wait while that show was interrupted by commercials, by advertising.
But capitalism eventually gives you on-demand temporality.
Yeah, and now you know, many, if not most nights, I watch Star Trek: The Next Generation on TV when I want to, and it's right now, right here. So like just living through that kind of shift in temporality, that itself has done weird things to my perception of time. I mean, you used to be able to tell what day of the week it was by what was on TV. You know, change it to channel 15 when you get home from school. And
albums were released Tuesday.
Yeah, and now and movies came out Thursday nights or Fridays, but you know, Thursday nights.
And I know it's Monday because Raw is on USA.
Yep. But yeah, even that, like, I'll be honest with you, I don't know the last time I experienced deja vu. But I'd be willing to bet that it happened more often before we lived in the always on demand, everything right now world. And I don't know, maybe that's something in my individual brain, but
this brings me to my next thing with Nick and CCRU: time anomalies, coinky dinks.
yeah,
Right? If accelerationism is a theory of time, and if that theory of time holds, that capital exponentially amplifies the intensity of time. It time crunches faster, now, right? If that's it, you wonder, what does that also do for deja vu?
I mean, I would honestly
these are
think
just
deja
big
vu,
open-ended questions, but
I would want to romanticize deja vu. Because deja vu it's an island in the sun, man. Like that's a vacation on a sunny beach somewhere, because you're going back far away to a world that is very, very distant from the traumatic time crunch. I can't help but think doppelgangers are very related.
And doesn't she get into this? Yeah, she this is the other Baudrillardian element coming up, is the doppelganger.
Yeah, the doubling. I can't help but think they're somehow the same thing in your brain happening. So I don't know.
Well, deja vu is a kind of doubling of time, whereas the doppelganger is a doubling of the subject.
Space?
I mean, it's typically really a doubling of you.
But it's you as an object. It's you objectified.
Yeah, that's a good point. Your body.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, here's the thing.
I think
if I don't cut in right here, I'm going to forget this thing. I want to go back for a minute before we finish this up, because we're very close to being done with this reading. Nance, we were talking about the apocalypse and how focusing on some big giant image of the apocalypse can get us to disavow the little crises that we are facing here and now. If a bunch of the crises we're facing have to do with simulations, the type that Baudrillard was talking about, what is the effect of the simulation hypothesis in this equation?
Yeah.
Riff on that for a minute.
I have been fascinated with the simulation hypothesis for years. And it was, I don't know, close to a decade ago at this point, when Elon Musk popularized simulation hypothesis, when he was talking about Nick Bostrom's thesis. And Nick Bostrom said, if we continue advancing at this rapid rate, which we are advancing, it will become inevitable that we develop lifelike simulation technology. Now, he's gone on to add some nuance to the thing. So, and even then, it was more nuanced than what Elon Musk made it out to be. But Nick Bostrom said, well, if it's highly likely or almost inevitable that we will develop realistic lifelike simulations, then what's to say that we aren't living in a realistic lifelike simulation already? And then they went on to try to extrapolate some kind of like mathematical
The
formula
universe
for the likelihood.
itself is a simulation.
Yeah. Like there's almost 0% probability that we're living in base reality just because it's inevitable that we'll develop this type of simulation technology, blah, 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 blah. And I don't know. I think it's silly. I think it's fascinating and interesting. And I'm hopefully soon I'll have a short story about simulation hypothesis going up. But it really does serve as this like ultimate disavowal of everything.
Especially of Baudrillardian simulations. The things that he was talking about in our capitalist economies and all of this. Well, if the universe is a simulation, then what do our, little mild, whatever, the mall, the suburbia, what does this shit matter? And it's a way of
it defangs them.
Yeah, exactly.
And it allows you to say, well, if everything is simulated, then it doesn't matter. All this paltry shit over here doesn't matter. I'm still living in glorious simulated reality. And this dumb French guy, Baudrillard, who does all he knows how to do is
he just
smoke
thinks the
cigarettes.
mall and consumer society
yeah.
simulation.
Yeah. But no, the simulation hypothesis, it has, I think, replaced God. I think modernity killed God. Jesus didn't do it. Modernity did it. There's no such thing as an American Christian, only American consumers. But the simulation hypothesis has kind of filled in the gap that people think God is supposed to play. So the simulation hypothesis becomes this simulated God, and it becomes this simulated like cosmic, ontological, metaphysical thing. And it allows people to not have to deal with the fact that there is no such thing as a contemporary Christian. There is no such thing as God anymore. That's terrifying. Like for society as a whole to really reckon with the fact that God is dead, and it wasn't Jesus who did it, or it wasn't Pontius Pilate who did it. It wasn't
Nietzsche.
It wasn't Nietzsche. It was modernity. It was the commodity. It was capitalism. That's horrifying. And so it keeps people from being able to take up our own agency as human subjects. It allows us to continue to be God's little objects. And I just have to follow the rules. I just have to fit into this proper role. Oh, God commanded me to X, Y, and Z, so I'm going to X, Y, and Z. And I don't like those people, so I'm going to come up with some weird fucked up justification for why God doesn't like them either. None of that shit matters anymore, motherfucker. We're living in the future. You have to deal with it as a subject, but rather than dealing with it as a subject, you just come up with this simulation hypothesis and you say, oh, nothing is really real anyway, so I can just,
Doesn't the simulation hypothesis also, so on the one hand, here's the Baudrillardian. Okay, first off, Nick Bostrom, I guarantee, has not read Baudrillard. And if he has, it's very little.
Yeah, no.
So he doesn't get this thing. But what he's talking about with simulation does fit into a Baudrillardian framework, because he's trying to say the universe is the universe minus its hard
the reality of the universe.
Its hard referential kernel.
Yeah.
And so there's that. But the thing is, okay, on the one hand, you can take the simulation hypothesis to be a way to get us to not deal with the Lacanian real of Baudrillardian simulations.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
It takes away from that. It defangs them. It neutralizes them. Second, the simulation hypothesis also functions to defang one of Baudrillard's most important books, The Perfect Crime, which is Baudrillard trying to explain to us what the perfect crime is. And the perfect crime is the murder of reality that none of us have even noticed. And that's what makes it a perfect crime.
Yep.
And So here's the thing. If reality has always been a simulation, it couldn't have ever been murdered. Right? This murder that Baudrillard's talking about happens at a certain point in history. And it happens with the rise of simulation. Right? So simulation is what kills the real. But if simulation is the universe and the universe has always already been simulation, then the real has never existed at all. And so, nothing to worry about. Nothing was lost.
So the simulation hypothesis provides a justification for Jordan Peterson's version of postmodernism to just say, oh, fuck it, nothing is real, it doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. It also provides a justification for a weird, like, reactionary or hyper conservative position by becoming the new ground and saying, well, there's nothing real to begin with in the first place, so we are gonna enact our own fucking weird simulated bullshit, and we're gonna, I don't know. Yeah.
It enables us to so the simulation hypothesis enables us to disavow the murder of the real.
Yeah.
That's how I would put it. But, okay, let's finish this thing out.
Let's do it. Last stretch right here. We often hear that contemporary biopolitics reduces us to
did we
life.
read that? I think as social. Rather,
oh shit!
I think that's it.
Yeah, as social rather than just individual structure, disavowal also undergoes some important permutations, which can be resumed briefly as follows. Knowledge about some traumatic reality, the I know well, gets strangely redoubled or split, and itself starts playing the role of the object fetish that protects us against this traumatic reality. Knowledge thus adopts a new and different role. It is no longer simply something to be disavowed, but paradoxically, something that can help us disavow the real of this same knowledge. We'll discuss this in more detail in the next chapter.
I mean, it's just this idea that knowledge itself serves to facilitate the denial of that knowledge.
Yeah, it absolves you. It's
if
like,
you know it, you don't have to be impacted by it. That's the weird trick here.
Yeah. I know that Arizona's running out of water, but I like to take 45-minute showers.
But nevertheless.
But nevertheless, I'm going to take a 45-minute shower or, whatever. And we all do that. It's Elon Musk. I know, because like he was big on climate change years ago. Or at least that's what he claimed, that he cared about climate change, and that's why he wanted to make electric cars and blah, blah, blah. And that's why he wanted to send rockets to outer space, because we need to be a multi-planet species and this and that. But now he's building data centers that are depleting the planet of its resources, that are using up all the water. Like, he's actively engaged in being a large problem for the long-term stability of the planet. But he will still talk about, oh, yes, I know all too well that this is unsustainable, and that is why I am trying to get us off of planet Earth. Like,
I know very well that this device was made by child slave labor, but nevertheless.
Yep. We often hear that contemporary biopolitics reduces us to bare life, or that it enslaves us by making us hostages to mere survival. I'm not sure that this is really the case. There is little evidence that we really care that much about our survival. Rather, we seem to be caught up in a deeply self-destructive carnival in which we enjoy the spectacle of possibly dying and disappearing. Lives do not really matter, except rhetorically, or actually, only some lives matter. Rather than being survivalists, we seem to be caught in a kind of crazy heroism. We would quite literally rather die than let ourselves be scared to death by what we are facing. We are more afraid of something scaring the shit out of us than of actually dying.
I mean, I just like what you can extract from that, which is to say humans are not pleasure oriented, they're jouissance oriented.
Yep.
You know, we don't really want safety. Of course, we want it on some level, but what we really want is the thrill, the risk, you know, and so the
Well, and
unconscious is
again,
a
dude,
thrill seeker.
like that's why all this stuff works. That's why security came to replace safety, because security was sexy. Whereas safety was, kind of boring, and we bucked the system, and we would intentionally fuck it up and intentionally transgress it and cause problems for ourselves and stuff like that. But security is the sexy thing. It's just like all these other things, like they get their libidinal hooks in us, and that's how it operates. Like we are a part of the circuit. But the circuit plays us like a fucking fiddle. And that's why thinking about this stuff and like trying to critically engage and interrogate what we're doing is important. Not just trying to sit back and mathematically understand supply and demand and, concrete and abstract and this and that. Like, no, you also have to account for the subject. Else you'll find yourself in a position where there is no subject, and it's all just the magical object at the end of the universe or at the end of time. So,
All right, so now conspiracy theories, deception, and doppelgangers.
oh shit, hold on. That's not in the same place.
Should we then conclude?
Okay. Shit, hold on. I think I probably do need to get a better PDF.
Does it cut off?
Yeah, but it's at the end. Okay, hold on. Should we then conclude, there we go, with Gunther Anders, that we need to increase our capacity for fear, to stop fearing fear and have the courage to be frightened? Well, perhaps, but things are a bit more complicated than that. It is not certain that fearing the fear itself is the most precise diagnosis of our state of mind. At least in the present context, we may be a bit too quick in evading another significant social dimension of fear, namely the fear of deception, of being perhaps purposely and systematically deceived. This comes particularly to the fore in conspiracy theories, but is by no means restricted to them. Not being naive or anybody's fool often seems to be our top priority. That's the fucking guy who's so concerned with always smelling a rat that he winds up becoming the fucking rat.
Yep. And she links conspiracy theories to denial later in the book, not disavowal.
Yeah. Not being naive or anybody's fool often seems to be our top priority. Perhaps we should put it like this. We are concerned much more with the possibility of a deception or illusion about some real than with this real itself and its traumatic dimension. And while compared to the fear of fear, this fear of deception may seem more superficial or anecdotal, merely psychological, and lacking in depth. We will show in the next chapter that this is not necessarily so, and that the fear of deception can in fact be connected to a profound ontological anxiety. Here we might recall a very lucid remark that Clement Rosset makes in his analysis of the double, or the doppelganger, which can be seen as a figure of a false and deceptive other me. If something like my double appears, we are dealing not with two constituted rival ontological entities, me and my double, but rather with something that induces a doubt in the original, me, as an ontological entity. Rossett reverses the standard diagnosis of Otto Rank, who linked the anxiety in the face of a double to our primordial fear of death. We usually consider the reality of the double to be better than ours. And in this sense, it can indeed seem that the double represents an immortal instance in relation to the subject, which is Rank's thesis. However, the real source of our anxiety is not simply our future death, but above all, the possibility of our present non-reality and non-existence. The fact that it could be that we are not, as Rossett puts it, it wouldn't be so hard to die if we knew for sure that we have at least lived. But it is precisely this life, as perishable as it is, that the subject starts to doubt in the cases of split personality or the appearance of a double. The anxiety goes deeper than a fear of death. In the ill-fated couple in which I am united with a phantom other, the real is not on my side, but rather on the side of the phantom. It is not the other that redoubles me. It is instead I. It is instead that I am the other's double.
That's because the other appears to be the version of you that has access to full enjoyment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it's always staged. That's why it's a mischief maker. That's why it's problematic. It can't be controlled. And that's why you identify with it. Tyler Durden, right?
Yeah.
Like, which it appears to be better than you. It's better looking than you. It's more talented than you. But yeah, it is. See, she doesn't say a lot about disavowal here. I would want to say, though, the psychic appeal of the double is it enables you to disavow something about yourself, which is to say, even if you reckon with the fact that you're lacking, you think there's some version of yourself that could not be lacking.
Yeah.
And that's the disavowal, I think.
It's like with deja vu, where you see this thing, but you say, but that's not happening to me. That's happening to younger me. With the doubling, with the doppelganger, you're saying, yeah, but that's not happening to me. I'm the double. There's that other me over there. That's the original. That's the real me. The guy with the big dick and all the shoes and all the sunglasses and the lowrider. And
rich.
That's really who I am. You know, this fucking loser, schleppy fucking schmo over here. Yeah, it's me, but it's not the real me. So at least the real me gets to go on and have all the cool shit. And
I'm not the one who
ice
gets
cream.
to actually live. I never got to live.
Yeah.
The double gets to live. I mean, that's the whole thing in Fight Club. The narrator isn't living. I mean, that's insomnia. He doesn't feel like, he's really alive.
Well,
and
I mean,
but Tyler is living.
That's why the internet is so goddamn just insidious, man, because it allows us to double ourselves. It allows us to create what Hans-Georg Muller will call your profile, and he'll go on to talk about prophilicity and authenticity and blah, 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 and this and that. And it's very interesting, though I don't agree with it all. But no, this idea of the internet providing your very own custom-made on-demand double. You don't have to actually achieve anything or do anything or be anything anymore, because you could just create the double.
Well, the avatars
and the double does it all for you. Yeah. Philip K. Dick has also written about doubles in Philip K. Dick wrote The Simulacrum. Most people know Philip K. Dick for Do Androids Dream, which became Blade Runner. I think that's probably his most well-known work. I think my favorite Philip K. Dick book is The Simulacrum. And he wrote it a few years before Do Androids Dream. And it's not really about doubling per se, but I think he's playing around with the notion, but he's also written multiple stories about doubling. I think anyone who likes Baudrillard, you will probably like a lot of Philip K. Dick's short stories. Now, his longer works are also really good too, but he wrote a fuck ton of really interesting short stories.
What do you think about this thing she says at the beginning about this deep fear of being deceived?
No, I mean, that's that if anything, can kind of characterize the modern denizen of the internet, I think it's that fear of being deceived. We cannot cope with appearing faulty because we are all doubles. We are all objects. We've objectified ourselves.
And that's why trust had withered away.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're living in this post-fact or post-truth world. And also people find it difficult to trust. And I think for me, dude, trust is, that's the one thing we can choose to do as a human, as a subject. It's trust. Like that is the ethical relation. Read Levinas, motherfuckers. Like that's it. Like it's trust. You have to trust in the other as a human in order for you to be able to act ethically as a human.
And you know, Nance, most people walk around with a basic default trust in others. It's just not on the internet.
Right.
Like, but I see it operate in the coffee shop.
Well, and that's the thing, man. And I think there are increasingly, it's getting harder for younger people, and not just younger people, because I've seen it happen to people my age and even older, where their brain breaks and their trust muscle has atrophied because they spend so much time on the internet. Dude, my dad's wife killed herself. And that was fucking gnarly. But for a couple years before, she was really getting into online conspiracy theories. Yeah, fancy that, talking about conspiracy theories. But she used to watch this guy talk about earthquakes. And he was convinced that he could predict earthquakes, and somehow earthquakes, if you studied earthquakes, you could figure out how the Democrats were fucking children, or I don't know. It was fucking insane, but it was bad, dude. And I watched it happen. And she talked about the Mandela effect, and she talked about all this crazy shit deeper and deeper into the conspiracy world. And it was actually really rough because I, like, not having the closest or greatest relationship, I still really tried. I was like, she's losing her marbles. We need to do something about this. And, it was over the course of a couple of years, she, didn't make it, but that was trust. Like her trust withered away. Like by the end of it, she put up security cameras around their house, and she would watch, like, out her front window. She would just sit out her front window and just watch as people went by. And like, dude, trust is so fucking
courage.
So
when it comes to dealing with others, the courage of friendship is the ability to embrace the vulnerability and risk of being duped.
Yeah.
And if you turn that off, it drives you fucking nuts. You have to be willing to be duped by the other.
Fallibility, dude. Like we that's a core element of what we are as humans is that I will not always be successful. We're not objects. We're not machines purpose built to specific tasks and under specific conditions. Like, no, we're soft and squishy creatures.
There's a black box built into us called subjectivity, which makes us unpredictable. Even though we're very predictable in a lot of ways, there's always this more fundamental. People you've known your whole life can still fucking shock you out of nowhere. And you'll either let that drive you into isolation, which will eat away at your sanity, or you'll just embrace risk, which is always comes with a friendship with the other.
And that's the thing. When it comes to capital, when it comes to the algorithmic operation of the object that we're slowly becoming, it can't abide risk. It always needs a return on investment. If all there is risk, it can't invest in it. Like, that's the key feature of what is a human, is that we can sit back and we can calculate, and we do. Like, it's smart. You shouldn't run around downtown at 3:00 in the morning drunk or on drugs, or like, you should be aware of your safety. But also, like, we can calculate and we can see, oh, there's no financial return. There's no immediate financial reward for me going back to symbolic exchange with Baudrillard and gift giving, and like you have to hang yourself out. You have to expose yourself to risk, and the reward comes not in material gain. The reward comes in being able to be a subject, being able to act ethically and live in this
and to
ethical
have
world.
meaningful bonds with others.
Right. Computers don't give a fuck. Like my computer doesn't care about your computer, even though we like,
Chat GPT therapy bot does not care about you.
Yeah.
It might have the signs, the simulacrum.
Oh, and it'll simulate him fucking better than we can. It'll be more
but
compelling than any other
give
human.
A fuck.
Yeah.
It does not have Dasein's care structure. It does not have desire.
And that goes to when we spend time, when we spend the majority of our time, or at least our free time, projecting simulations of ourself as objects, or doubling ourselves for, capital, or for the small other, we can't engage in risk. And so we're like that is atrophying. We can't be seen. Being deceived is more traumatic than actually dying. Like for a regular human being, you win some, you lose some, but for this double, for this objectified avatar, that's the worst thing in the world. If you're wrong on the internet, then you're fucking wrong. And it's a war of all against all, and everybody piles on, and it's just on to the next. You're here and then you're gone in an instant. So yeah, the more time we spend in this simulated world that is moving away from hyper reality into this new integral world, we have to expose yourself to risk. Allow yourself to be deceived, but also don't allow yourself to be deceived. Don't get hoodwinked by a fucking used car salesman. Go out and connect with friends.
We defend reason.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Risk and reason. Risky reason.
Well, and that's what we do. That's what machines currently cannot do. And like that's the fucking battle.
They also don't have the pull, the gravity of jouissance as the lure.
Right.
And so, okay, Nance, one more paragraph. Why don't you play us out?
Something similar can be said to be in play with the fear of deception. The implications of what appears to be fear of looking foolish and naive are reaching all the way to the core of our very past and present being. This can explain, to some extent, why the prospect of our future, even if imminent, death seems less scary than the idea of our existence, our being as it is now, possibly constituting a scam, because it bears on our present and past reality rather than on our future reality. To paraphrase Reset, to perish in the future would at least confirm that we have lived. The anxiety relating to deception can be much more visceral. At the same time, it looks as if acute awareness, proclaimed knowledge of deception, can somehow provide a paradoxical life jacket maintaining us in being.
So here's the problem. Constantly living in a state of disavowal is the surest way to guarantee you never really live. To truly live, in a Lacanian sense, is to encounter the real.
Yep.
And obviously there's some instantiations of it that are too much for us to bear, but the ethic ought to be something like, I am attempting to bear as much of the real as I can, which is precisely what disavowal runs from.
Yep.
So if you're trying to truly live, to live is to truly reckon with the real to the best of your ability, to wrestle with it, to struggle with it, to fight with it. And if you're constantly in a state of disavowal, you protect yourself from it, but at the end of your life, you're like, I never did anything.
Yep. And you go
So
out.
I think there's some existential advice in that last paragraph.
Hell yeah, dude. I think like there's so much here. And if anybody out there in TV land wants to know more about Disavowal, get this book. This is
Guys,
where you go for Disavowal.
This incredible section that we just read. That's just the warm up. That's the lead up to the main theory section of the book, which is conceptual niceties right here.
Yep.
That's where the real theory's at. This is just
dude. This
is the foreplay.
Yeah. This is the opener. And then she goes on to fucking headline. And it's a banger. It's a banger.
But as far as a concise piece, this is one of my favorites Alenka ever
absolutely
wrote. So
absolutely.
Guys, I think we're gonna, end it here. I think we've gone on long enough, and it's a very short piece, but there's so much to go back to here and to rethink. So we really hope, this put this book on your radar. If you haven't read it, it's a short book. You can read it in one sitting. I wouldn't recommend it because there's so much to absorb. But if you want, just on the level of, you could do it in one sitting. But again, if you haven't read any of Alenka Zupančič's work, this is a great intro into her work. Her classic works like What is Sex and The Ethics of the Real, those are a bit harder to work your way through, but absolutely rewarding. Those are books that can change your life. And so, it's just about time that, we read something from Alenka. I'm super happy that we got to read it with the ghost of Baudrillard with us.
Yeah, dude.
I think that's super fucking cool. And so, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Nance?
Yeah.
Final thoughts?
Let's couple, you know what? My final thought is gonna be a lesson.
Out of Why Theory's book here?
Yeah, taken after Todd and Ryan. I think, of course, after reading this, I think you all should definitely go out and pick up this book. If not, pick up the PDF and read through it and sit with it. Because I think I like, for me, Disavowal really comes alive here in this piece we just read and in this book itself. And I think it's very important concept to deal with. So there's that. But then also, I think you should go out and watch Fight Club rather than reading Fight Club, even though I do think Fight Club is a better book than it is a better movie. It's still a great movie. And I think not only does it deal with the doppelganger or the doubling, but I think it also kind of demonstrates disavowal and the nihilism that we're talking about. Because in the end, it's all nihilism. Like in the end, it all is just this big act of disavowal. So,
except at the very end, which no spoilers, but by the end, he has that encounter with the real.
Yeah.
And so, funny as it sounds, Fight Club ends on a very positive note, at least from our perspective.
Yeah.
So I love it. Yeah. Watch Fight Club.
Watch Fight Club.
But don't talk about it.
But don't talk about it. Yeah.
So we already failed.
We
talked about it.
Yeah.
All right, guys. This has been great.
Has been great.
We'll catch you on the flip side.
Peace.
Later.
Don't let the bed bugs bite.